Do you play any keys?
No, but I do have an electric piano right there.
Is it within reach? Is it within reach?
Could be. Yeah.
Mine is right here. But it's also not an electric piano. Let's turn that down. That's no electric piano.
I like that tone.
I actually don't want to say what it is because I want it to be a secret where the sound comes from, kind of.
Is it a MIDI?
No, it's actually not a MIDI controller.
All right.
So you know what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah.
Terry. How does that make you feel?
I hate it.
Well, you don't have a choice. You signed up for this.
I know.
Well, I mean, it's not. So think of it this way. It's not really about you. Your story is simply, in this case, an example for a broader story that we're all living, the human experience.
Yeah. I thought about this morning. I think, and this was just for me, but I think discipline is not its own thing. Like, obtaining discipline is not the prize. Discipline is a tool or a vehicle. And I think for me, that is a distinction that I have to keep in perspective sometimes.
Is discipline a practice or a trait?
It's a practice. I mean, it may come with respect to being a trait. It may come easier for some folks, but I think it's, I don't think it, I mean, if I'm understanding the distinction correctly, I don't think it's a trait in the sense that you're born with it or you're not. Maybe. I don't know.
Probably degrees. Probably to some degree.
Yeah.
Do you consider yourself naturally inclined to be a disciplined person?
For sure now. For sure.
Well, I mean, if you say now, then that means that it wasn't natural.
I don't really remember. I don't think it was, but I can't tell if it was, I wasn't, this is a relatively new, and by new, I mean like past 20 years thing, like the first part of adulthood. It wasn't like this. So I don't know if that's a function of age and just learning what it means. Are there really disciplined 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds? Probably.
Yeah, but fewer than 40-year-olds or 50-year-olds.
For sure. I was not a disciplined 18 or 19-year-old.
No, me either. Me either.
At all. Whatever.
Do you want me to give you a story of lack of, maybe this wasn't discipline, maybe this was lack of perspective. I'd worked as a mover doing seasonal laboring work at this place down the street from my house. And in my mind, there was no reason to go to college because I could make $500 a week at the movers. And with the benefit of hindsight, it's a good thing that I didn't opt for that because that's a seasonal job and you only make $500 a week for about 4 months a year. And I had no backup plan. I had no, like, what do I do in January when nobody's moving? It's just like $500 a week. Why would I go to school?
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. It's hard as a younger person because your experience base is so limited and half of what you do is in, rejection of what you've been taught by your parents, whether admittedly or not. And your experience base is so small that it's hard to have perspective on what is or is not a good choice or sort of what's the concept of making decisions at a young age that do or do not, provide benefit for your life long term is not a concept that you think about. It's all, you're very much a prisoner of the moment.
Right. That's part of why part of why people have generational feuds. It's not like 20-year-old. Sorry, it's not that this generation is lazy. It's that 20-year-olds appear lazy.
Yeah,
55-year-olds as an example. Not saying that that's exclusively where generational conflict comes from, but it's a factor for sure.
And kudos to you, because that's a learning for me in us doing this.
Well, I mean, someone had to tell me that too. I don't know who it was.
Yeah. But that's one of those things that I call it, or I think of it as, it sounds like it should be the case, but when you dig one layer below the surface, it's not. There are all sorts of statements that people make, like these kids today, and follow that with whatever you want to follow it with. That sounds good to say, but if you think about the context as you've explained it to me, it's not that it's the kids today. It's go back to any point in time in history, and it's 20-year-olds at that time.
You can also specify. So rather than say kids today, or rather than say a generation, who specifically do you mean?
Yeah.
People that were rioting in the streets? Well, okay, you have an issue with those rioters in the streets.
Yeah.
People who were wearing clothes that were too revealing? Okay, we have an issue with those people that were wearing clothes that were too revealing. If you can make a statement that is truly generalizable, which is kids today spend too much time on their phones, and you can specify, here are all the kids today, here's all the time they spend on their phones, here's how that compares to how much time boomers are spending on their phones, and here's what makes the kids today meaningfully different than boomers or Gen Xers or whoever else. Okay, sure. Then you've made a very good observation there. But if it's on gut feel that your grandkids are on their phone all the time, just complain about how your grandkids are on the phone all the time.
Yeah.
Why is it generalizing to all the kids? Shoot, you could even say all of the kids I know are on the phone almost all the time. That's an extremely defensible statement, because it's based on you, whoever you are, and your perception of who you saw and a very specific set of people. And whoever's listening to you say that, they've got all the boundaries that you've described. It's the people you know. So there's like, how many people do you know that are that generation? When you see them, okay, when are you seeing them? Is it at a bus stop? Because that's a good place to be on a phone. Yeah. So I don't know. That's what I mean about generalizing, though. So the Terry Miller story. That's what I'm going to unofficially call it.
The TM story.
Yeah. Well, that's funny you bring this up. The first TM is going to be TM on TM. Tell me about the TMs.
Not trademark.
No.
1996.
Hold on. Can we just say what TM is first?
Transcendental meditation.
Terry Miller on Transcendental meditation.
Yeah. Yes. Do you ever think about the saying yeah versus yes?
Yes, I do think about it sometimes.
Do you have a position or an opinion?
I don't have a position on those phrases any more than a position on basically all common slang.
Yeah.
I'm glad that there is an actual term, yes. It's strange to me that yeah has become common, especially since it has no additional meaning. And it seems like it would be really confusing for an English speaker or for a non-English speaker to figure out yeah and yes.
I find myself in this loop where I say yeah all the time as a substitute for yes. And it's a reflexive, my brain antagonizes me when I say it. So it's like, I say yeah, and my brain's like, hillbilly. Yeah, hillbilly. And it doesn't stop. Like, it's just this perpetual loop. So,
wow.
No discipline with the saying of the yeah.
Does transcendental meditation help you discipline your self-flagellation in your mind?
I should tell the story about how I got into it.
Yeah, give me the 1996. Was it 96 you said?
1996. I was in college. And this was my first election, presidential election. And we had this radical thing on C-SPAN at the time where they gave tons and tons of airtime to third-party candidates. I was a big fan of that. And one of the candidates who was running for the Natural Law Party was a quantum physicist named John Hagelin. And he's now the president of the Maharshi Institute in Fairfield, Iowa. But he was also a big proponent of TM, and he spoke about it continuously as one of his campaign platform tenets. And when he spoke about it, he spoke about the mountains of medical research associated with all the benefits, and we won't get into that here. But it was something that I did a lot of research on at that time. Wanted to do it, saw the price tag, and didn't do it. I came to it many years later. I did do it. I did it with my son. I put my son through it with me, and it changed my life. It's unlike anything. I can't explain it. I'm not trying to be a proselytizer for the practice. Some people, it might not work. Some people may have reservations about it, but for me, it changed my life. And the main way it changed me personally, there are a bunch of ways, but the main way it changed me personally is there is a resignation that things are as they are. And there is a sort of an acquiescence to turmoil. It's going to be here, but it doesn't have an impact on me, and mostly. And so there's just such a feeling of calm and being centered. It's if you know, everybody has the old, what one thing would you take to a desert island trope. That would be it for me in terms of practices that I feel like have facilitated well-being in my life.
I don't think that's what that exercise is about. I think you're supposed to take a physical thing, like your blankie.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You would take transcendental meditation. Now, there's no way to separate that practice from you. Like
No.
Anywhere you are, no
Yeah.
matter what's going on, like you can do it.
Yes.
So tell me what it is on what's day one of transcendental meditation practice, and then you've done it for a long time. Contrast those two.
Day one is trying to keep your mind from going wild. And you're not supposed to try to do anything. That's, I think, the distinction between TM as a practice and a lot of the other meditation practices. It's supposed to be effortless. It's supposed to be the openness to, if your mind goes wild, then let your mind go wild. Keep doing your thing, and your mind will come back, and it does. So day one is trying to figure out what it's supposed to be, what it's supposed to feel like. Am I doing it right? My mind's going crazy. I'm thinking about a lot of things. Today, it's, that happens. Yes, that happens sometimes, but it's just quiet. It's all it is today. It's quiet. And I have, I've been doing it long enough now that there are a few little things that happen, through the course of it, but it's mainly just you start doing it, 20 minutes later, you're finished doing it, and you feel like you slept all night. And that's literally how it feels. It's just quiet. It's just quiet.
How long did it take to go from racing mind to the first? So two-part question. How long did it take before you were, quote unquote, doing it right? And then what period of time were you doing it right? Was it like, I had 30 minutes of meditation and I meditated with clarity for a minute or two? Or was it like, after 3 weeks of trying, I found clarity and my mind just sort of went blank for 15 minutes?
Yeah, I don't know. It's I think the key to it was sort of in line with what we're talking about. The key to it was, I'm doing it. I'm not trying to grade it. And by grade it, I mean quantify, is this right? Is this wrong? I'm doing it. I'm going to do it. And it's incremental. It's incremental, the progress. And it's it truly is a situation where I don't remember any sort of benchmarks along the way, other than pretty much immediately it was a mix of that's the way that's supposed to feel, I think, and I'm bad at this, and the moments of thinking I'm bad at this got shorter and shorter and shorter. And sometimes, I mean, I don't probably do it perfectly now. I don't know how anybody else does it, but I know it works for me.
All right. So where do you do this? And is it the same place every day?
Wherever. Yeah, wherever. Plane, bus, train, bed. Not in bed. I don't want to be laying down, but I'd say at home it tends to be in my office where I am here.
Sitting down, standing up,
Sitting down. Yeah.
eyes closed, eyes open.
Eyes closed.
What's the first moment of transcendental meditation look like?
Man, it's great.
Like if I was watching, what would I be seeing?
You would see me inhale deeply a couple of times, exhale deeply a couple of times, and then just sit there with my eyes closed. That's what you would see. But I think the specifics of the practice are what they are. And I think, as is the case with a lot of things, you would find your way to it probably differently than I did. And it would be a different thing for you, maybe. But I think done right, we all sort of meet at the spot that I am, which is, this has had a big impact in my life. And I think that's the beauty of what the discipline of that practice has provided for me.
How much do you do it?
Twice a day, every day, 20 minutes each time. So it's a commitment.
Do you ever miss a day? How long has it been since you missed a day?
I've never missed a day.
Okay, well, never means that you were born and you transcendentally meditated.
Since I started, I haven't missed a day. I've been doing it for about 10 years.
All right. What happened between 1996 when you first found out about it and 2013 when you got serious?
Mayhem.
You just revisit it and you're like, oh, my mind is too cloudy. I need to go take a look at this meditation thing again.
I was on a journey. I mean, I knew, I had an awareness that where I was wasn't where I wanted to be. And that's a cheesy cliche, but there was an awareness that there was a level of me that I wasn't tapping into. There were things that I was missing. I was caught in, what's known in Eastern philosophy as the emotional plane. And I didn't want to be there. So I was like, seeking for things. And it was a bunch of things that I kind of came into at that time. But I remembered, I've thought of TM off and on that entire time, but I just made a commitment that I was going to do it.
Do you have a rigorous reading habit?
I did. It's hard for me now. Obviously, I have not a lot going on, and the time that I have available to read, unfortunately, I've committed to technical reading. So architectures and that sort of thing, just based on my station in life right now. So
was there a point in time where I could have asked you when was the last day you didn't read, and you'd have said, I've never missed a day of reading?
Yeah, but that's a small window. Actually, I read every day. That's not
incidentally, or by, like there's Terry's reading time.
There's Terry's reading time. So, nice transition, nice segue. My mornings, I get up between 4:30 and 6. In the morning. I don't ever set an alarm. I literally never set an alarm. I can't remember the last time I did. Actually, I do. It was last June. But I rarely set an alarm. I'm up between 4:30 and 6. I have this whole tea thing that I do. It's Chinese clay pots and the tea that I have. So I have that. I read.
The
Do a
Dong
little.
Fu kind of thing.
That's the ceremony is called that. But I have their Yixing clay pots, so they're purple clay. They're from a specific area of I think it's Yunnan, or no, it's the Yixing region of China. They're purple clay, and they're great to brew pu'er tea, which is what I have every morning. I do that. I read. I do Spanish. I go for a run. I have breakfast. I meditate, and then I'm also in that time period. There's work. I've got to do. Then I do that. Then I work in 2-hour bursts. So sometimes it's more. Depends on what has to happen. But I'll do 2 hours of focused work. Do some other things. 2 hours of focused work, and that goes on basically my entire day. So. That's the morning.
What's your first work chunk in a day? Like what time of day would that start?
It can be when I first get up. And often it is.
It's like, bam, out of bed.
Yeah.
Take a leak.
Well, I get
writing docs.
I get tea, and I get going that way first, and I'll read a little bit first. I always read first thing. That's what I'll do. Or I'll audio, audiobooks and stuff, but I do that first off. So it's, within 20 or 30 minutes of waking, that's usually when I'll do my first burst of work.
And how late do you stay up working?
Well, I try to be in bed by 10 every day.
So it's a perfectly normal day lengthwise.
Yeah. So it's that schedule of 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. is fair game all day. For everything. And that's what I like about my schedule and sort of where I am is the flexibility to do what I need to do or want to do. And
how long has it been, if ever, since you had to show up to a 9-to-5 job?
Oh, man. When I first started with Siemens in 18, for a while, and it's a long story, but for a while I was with the Siemens Mobility office in Louisville.
Yeah.
But then I transferred into the Braunschweig, Germany, the corporate headquarters for mobility. So that was not a long period of time. That was tough.
What, having to go in for 9 to 5?
Yeah, just the drive, and
it's so that structure, which has been turned on its head since 2020, of I'm gonna show up at a place where everybody else showed up. I'm gonna only do that, and anything besides the work that happens inside those doors is that's basically an exception. Everything except the work inside that office is an exception. That model is discipline being shoved onto people who otherwise might be disciplined, but might not be disciplined, and basically enforcing it through habit and ritual and routine and punishment.
Yeah. It's coming back. I think the number of roles that require on-site or at least hybrid participation are certainly increasing. It's a lot of the remote stuff is going away, but it's inevitable that, asynchronous participation is going to happen, like across the board. I think it's inevitable.
That's a very important distinction. So remote work and asynchronous contribution are not the same thing.
Agreed.
And one of them is a red herring, and one of them actually matters. So the ability for me to better example, because we're talking about your day. If you have something that we're working on together and you do that thing at 4:45 in the morning, the idea that you have to be in an office, I have to be in an office, and it needs to be done between the hours of 9 and 5
It's
for
preposterous.
whatever that thing is insane.
It's
But the answer, like
preposterous.
the fix for this is not that you are remote, quote unquote, or that I am remote, quote unquote. The answer for this, wait for it, is the written word.
Yeah,
Like
it's the deliverable.
we have invented the written word in no small part so that not everything needs to happen by way of conversation. So things like good document management practices to know that we are working from my OneDrive, or we're working from your Google Drive, or we're working from email attachments, and doing that non-accidentally is a much bigger deal than remote versus in person versus anything else. And if need arose for you and I to have a face-to-face, whatever it is, for example, like if we felt like the podcast wasn't good because it's both of us staring at our computer screen, well, okay, then do we need to go tape 6, days straight of episodes by having seal us in a studio? Okay, well then let's consider doing that. And, there's always fitment to purpose. And I think treating the whole panoply of options. So, phone call, meeting, email, shared document, marking up a document, co-editing a document simultaneously, Slack, Teams, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that stuff, I find it hard to take anybody's suggestions for remote or in person very seriously if they're not talking about what's the full sort of plate of options there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this push, we went remote. Obviously, everyone was remote except for the real, hourly laborers that got stuck working in person, obviously. But the pandemic caused most people to work remotely. And I think corporate, commercial real estate is teetering on the brink of collapse because of that. And I think a lot of the office work doesn't have anything to do necessarily with productivity. I think a lot of it has to do with there's a big hit to the economy if commercial real estate doesn't come back. That's my personal opinion.
That's deep. I'm not gonna probe that any further.
Yeah.
All right. So you wake up, you go hard, you own your day, the whole day. I think that, I think without turning this into
David Goggins,
somebody worse than David Goggins, without turning you into, a social media talking head on this, you are actively in charge of what happens throughout your day, each day. There's not an enormous amount of deviation. The things that are deviations, you can predict somewhat in advance, and you kind of have built-in room for deviation already. This has been kind of meticulously put together over a long period of time. Am I characterizing this accurately?
You are.
Okay.
You are. And I think you live that as well, so you can appreciate what that looks like from a detail perspective.
I cannot relate to waking up at 4:30 naturally.
Sure.
And I think that there are parts of my day where I feel like it gets away from me on a more frequent basis, probably than you do.
So, but you have children. Is that specifically what you're referencing? Or when you say get away from you, what do you mean exactly?
Okay, so on balance, I am more disciplined and rigorous with structuring my day after having kids than before.
Sure.
So total amount of organization applied to 24 hours in a day has gone up. However, it's really tough to overstate just how much chaos a pair of small children can inject into any given life.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I've probably added 25% more organization than I did before, but the total entropy of my life has simultaneously gone up despite becoming more and better organized.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And there's an exponential increase in that feeling with the number of things that you try to do as you get older. So you, especially if you're aware, if you're just and that's, I think, a trap of a 9 to 5, especially one that you attend in person, is that is your day. And it sort of limits, this sounds hokey and maybe doesn't capture what I'm trying to say exactly, but it limits your creative ability. So all of your focus is on getting to, participating in, and getting home from that chunk of your day, and that is the day. Whereas I think as you get older, a healthy person has an awareness that there are things in life that I want to experience, participate in, that are outside of my 9 to 5 or how I earn a check. And then you start exponentially adding complexity because you want to do more shit. You want to do more stuff, and not games or that sort of thing necessarily, but even if you want to learn or continue education or participate in a charity or volunteer in something in your community or be active in your church or whatever, that increases the complexity of your life. So the need to be even more disciplined with your scheduling and with how you allot time throughout the week is a challenge.
A 9 to 5 job was much easier to sort of understand and acknowledge as, essentially, purchasing 48 weeks of 40 hours a week of my time, right? So it's the thing I am being paid for can change on a given day. I mean, sure, I've got my regular check-ins, I've got annual reviews, blah, 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 blah. But essentially it's carving out that time belongs to the company and not to me. And as go way back to the BlackBerry era, right? So when I mean, I'm not that young, but I do remember. I'm old enough to remember that I worked at kind of an old fashioned place, and generally it was not common for rank and file employees when I first started out after school to take home any amount of work. I mean, it was not everybody had a laptop. I mean, so the idea that, and certainly not everybody had a company supplied cell phone, and not all the cell phones had email on them, right? So if you're an executive, the assumption is you're checking email on a BlackBerry and you're opening up the laptop to email other executives to show them that you're working after dinner time, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a charade.
But for the regular people, the thing you were tested on was I would get a phone call at 8:32 if I wasn't at my desk. And I would get another phone call at 1:01 if I wasn't at my desk back from lunch. And I had to wear a tie. Why did I have to wear a tie? I don't know. I sat in front of a computer and didn't see other human beings except the other people wearing a tie all week. It's just what we did. And that was all perfectly well and good for being 20 to 25 years old. But I don't really want to be selling my time unless that's the most expensive thing that I have to offer. And just showing up and doing what I'm told to was worth a good amount of money. Like I was never hurting for money, but I don't think that the thing that I can do that is most valuable is show up and be told what to do. I think the thing that I do that is most valuable is figure out whatever my version of Terry's day looks like and be willing to ruthlessly prioritize and work on the stuff that is most important for me and for each person that gets a slice of me. And that can mean that each person is paying a lot of money for a thing that takes very little time. Or it could mean that there are some things that I get paid very little for and take a long time, but it is working towards something that either I or a collective group of people have agreed is worthwhile. And so that amount of sort of active control over what's happening, if you want to call that discipline, the self-awareness and the sort of taking charge of your direction, then that looks a lot different than if we're talking, from my perspective, that's a much different story for how disciplined my life is than if we're talking about, do I wake up at 4:30 and meditate?
Yeah. Really, really good points. A lot of good stuff there. I think.
Okay, can I ask one more question?
Sure.
How many times a day do you brush your teeth? There's no wrong answers. This is a safe place.
No, it's at least 3.
Well, my other question was going to be, how long has it been since you missed a toothbrushing or missed a day of toothbrushing? But if you're doing 3 a days or more anyway, I feel like when did you miss one is the wrong question.
Yeah, that the brushing of the teeth is.
How often do you go to a dentist?
As you're supposed to, like 6 months.
Once a year, 6 months?
6 months, yeah.
Do they comment on the fact that you're brushing your enamel away?
So here's a story of the dentist. Earlier this year, because of COVID and all that, I missed. It was probably 2 years in between checkups.
Yeah.
And I went back earlier this year for the routine cleaning and exam and images and all that, fully expecting them to tell me that all hell had broken loose inside my mouth, and I was representing Kentucky well, but it wasn't.
I don't
no
think
cavities,
that's appropriate
nothing.
to say that about Kentucky.
I live here.
Do you have fluoridated water?
We do.
I mean, like, what else is there? You have dentists. You have fluoridated water. I mean, whatever.
Yeah, it's hygiene. You gotta. How much sugar is part of your diet, and acidic products like soft drinks.
I need to spend more time in the non-directly in Louisville and Lexington parts of Kentucky. I was in. I mean, I'm sorry to say this, but basically other Kentucky. I was in Tennessee, and I got a beet salad. So, okay, this is a quick story, but it's funny. So I'm downtown in Knoxville, and I'm like, man, I could really go for some veggies. You know, I've been eating a lot of fried chicken and fast food because when in Rome. And let me find a place most likely to have a beet salad, right? Because I'm not a big vegetable eater necessarily, and I really don't like lettuce. So I'm like, give me something else to be the core of my salads. I'm like, what place would have a beet salad? I look around, I find a nice hotel with a conference center attached to it. I Google it very briefly. I see like very large wooden backed sign with sans serif font, very straight lines in the letters. And I'm like, that place has a beet salad. I go in there. They've got a beet salad. I got my kid with me. It's like one 3-year-old, me and a beet salad and a bunch of conference goers in this hotel restaurant. And it was a good beet salad, except that it had like candied nuts on it, and it had 3 different types of dressing on it. It had, no joke, man, it must have been an entire Trader Joe's package worth of
cheese,
of goat cheese on there. And I'm like, this is my vegetables, but also this is why I'm fat. Like, it's got all of the bad stuff turned up to 11, and I kind of have to like try and scrape it off to get to the beets, which I mostly wanted the beets and a little bit of zing from some acidity, maybe like a slight twinge of sugar, but like that sweet beet flavor was going to be enough. No, man, just hit you over the head with it.
Yeah,
but that wasn't in Kentucky. That was in other Kentucky.
So I don't know if it's a Southern thing or if the whole country's this way, but salads, if you're not careful, the salad comes as an accoutrement for the dressing. Like the lettuce is just sort of, you have to it's buried in a half of a jar of dressing. And so you have to be very careful with that here.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
I know. I'll go back and I'll try and order. I'll be like, can you make the same beet salad, but less gross? Make it less like dessert.
Yeah.
I'm trying to watch my figure.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, when you find yourself, we forgot a whole part of your day, and it's the part where you run off your beet salads.
Oh, in the morning. Yeah. That's the boring. That's just like brushing my teeth, though.
Well, that's important. That's an important distinction to make. The fact that you just go run a couple, what did you say, 6.5 minute miles?
6:57.
Okay. So you tear off a couple 7-minute miles like it's nothing, which means that you go and run for between 15 minutes and 25 minutes, but you're running fast.
Fewer than 15 if I only do 2 miles.
What's the longest you run?
3.
Do you ever find yourself like, man, I just want to keep running?
Yeah. Oh yeah. A lot.
And then you don't?
But I also go to the gym and weight train every day as well.
How long does that take?
Half hour, 40 minutes.
We don't have a website for this podcast, but if we did, I would be making a list of all the things that we're supposed to do 15 minutes a day. Because you spend 15 minutes a day brushing your teeth. You know, between walk into the tooth, unless it's in your pocket, you got to walk to the toothbrush. You got to get out some toothpaste. I assume you use toothpaste.
For sure.
You got to rinse up the toothpaste. You got to start scrubbing. You need at least a minute's worth of scrub. So let's say it's 3 minutes, right? You're at 3 minutes 3 times a day, and that's being generous because I think it could be more than 3 minutes for this process. You have 9 minutes of your day is brushing teeth every day.
But here's the thing, and this is a
I just
great
want to see it
point.
on a spreadsheet. That's all I'm trying to say here.
You've backed your way into this, but this is a fantastic point, and I think this is the sort of bow tie on my story. Is, you know what I don't do though? Because if you look at all the things
Well,
that I do,
yes, you don't do almost an infinite number of things.
I don't binge watch Netflix. I don't play games. I don't, I don't go sit at a bar and watch football and drink. That's what discipline is for me, is as much the things that I don't do as what I do. So if you spreadsheet my life, and I don't think this is a judgment of who is better and who is worse. This is me. It's my priority. If you spreadsheet my life against, probably, if you take my street, 99.9%, and I know this because I hear their comments all the time about, don't you ever take a day off? If you spreadsheet their lives against my life, they have as much time to do all the stuff that I do. It's just, I'm not at home from 7 o'clock at night until 11 o'clock at night, watching whatever I want to watch on television, or participating in sort of like the recreation time for me is limited, but that's my life by design. I do have time for that baked into my week. But I prefer, and we talked about this offline a little bit last week. Like, for me, it's the drag is knowing that there are so many experiences out there globally, whether it be a language or a cuisine or a culture, so many things out there that I don't know or haven't experienced. I want to experience as much as I can in life. And you don't do that binge watching Netflix, etc. So I think your point of, all the time of day that I spend doing the discipline things, true, but it just means that I've taken it away from those types of things.
I think most people that plop in front of a television set, whether that's in a bar or not, the issue is not the time spent or even what it is. It's the accidental nature of it, or the aimless nature of it.
Aimless. That's exactly right. That is exactly right. You just nailed it. It's aimless. So many, I feel like, and I don't want to be judgmental, but I feel like that is, if someone wants to talk about what the problems with culture are today, it's the aimlessness. And I don't know if that's social media or if that's just where we've arrived because we're wealthy as a country and we have it really good and we don't have to struggle for food. I don't know, but there's such an aimlessness, and that's the point. Is I don't want to be aimless. I want to do that.
I think you're going to have to spin up a new podcast called the Idlecast to get into a well-researched and deeply considered history of criticisms of idleness. It's also funny because idleness and aimlessness, which go hand in hand but are not the same thing, but aimlessness versus I'm going to intentionally sit for 40 minutes a day and do literally nothing.
That's fine.
That's right. And I think that distinction between I'm going to do all the way nothing, but it's going to be on purpose, versus I'm going to half do nothing, but I'm not exactly sure how I ended up there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I see it. And this is such a silly example. I really like the concept of aimless, and aimlessness. This is a silly example of that, but I see it with my son. I see it with a lot of folks. Like, we go to a restaurant and there's an intentionality. Even if I don't know what I'm going to have, I know roughly how it's going to go. And my son, and I see this with other people as well, will be like, just sort of order a whole bunch of things that probably he shouldn't order, like he just desserts and all this stuff. And he just sort of backs his way into it. There's no trade-off associated with, okay, so I'm kind of cautious about what I've done. I'm disciplined with what I've done. So there's no logic. There's no structure. It's just sort of an aimless perusal through the menu. And he ends up with a whole bunch of things that are not good and serve him no health purpose. They're just sort of aimless, things to eat. And I'm always curious, like, how did you end up with 6 egg rolls as an appetizer? I'm curious. And he's like, I don't know. It sounded good. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
But see, I think that's a thing. That's what I think discipline is, not just the decision to go jog, but I think it's a way of living one's life where you're sort of making assessments of everything you come into contact with, not in an unhealthy way where you can't live and can't function, but it's just become so internalized, like brushing your teeth, that everything you do goes through that filter. And I think I feel like that's a good place to be. Maybe it's not. Maybe, and maybe it's based on personality type. It's based on a lot of things, but.
Can I sum up in next steps here?
Yes.
To bring this to make this as corporate sounding as possible.
Oh, here we go.
No, just saying sum up in next steps is corporate sounding. That's all.
I gotcha. Circle back with me on some.
Yeah, so we got My Chaotic Life, which has its own versions of discipline, but I'm definitely ordering a lot of egg rolls. We got Terry's version, which is quite strict, but he likes it that way. So back off, neighbors. I think where we're going to go next is, if I feel like I want to learn something from Terry's rigorous discipline in his day to day. I want to learn something from that. And I want to do a life experiment based on Terry does this and is successful. I want to emulate a piece and see how it goes. So I haven't decided yet what that's going to be. What I'm going to do next time is I'm going to bring back a set of options. I'm going to say, what if I put meditation in my life? Or what if I decide to start running again? Or what if I decide to learn how to cook? Or what if I start counting calories? I'm going to come up with a list, and I'm going to pitch you this list, and I want you to go through like one at a time. Should I or shouldn't I consider it, to make a shorter list of areas where I can do a discipline experiment? That's the plan.
This is easy. You should do transcendental meditation. That should be the thing that you put in your life. Without question, we'll do all those other things will fall into line. And I have never counted calories, by the way.
I'm going to test you on all that. I'm going to bring the list. I'm going to put a pin in what you just said, and I'm going to take it seriously as the recommendation. It's kind of where I was leaning, but yeah. I'm going to put a pin in it. I'm going to come back, and we're going to go down the list. And if you can get out of the way of the suggestion you've already made, I need you to take a step back and give a neutral, non-biased take, Terry's take on each of these areas. That's what we're going to do next time.
I like it.
Yeah, I'm going to take us out. I'm going to take us out on some keys, because I feel like this one is good for me to learn some key stuff without looking at my fingers, and then it sounds musical without me having to do too much.
All I know is that your digital frame in the background has said some of the coolest things. It's different. The things that are popping up on there today, it's different, but some of the coolest stuff ever. Like a lot of nice color expression.
That was, so I took a road trip with Milo, age 3. I handed him the iPad while we were driving down the highway. I'm like, do you want to draw? He decided to color. I didn't know what he had done. I got home. He was already asleep. I go to the iPad to do my own art, and I'm like, oh man, these are cool. And then I put those through a video manipulation filter app to put on the screen. So it's new stuff. Glad you liked it.
The yellow orange combo.
It's so good.
Oh,
3-year-olds, man, they just get it. 3-year-olds get it. Don't overthink art.
We beat it out of them too. We tell them what has been good, and it's only the dude that painted Mona Lisa. That is art. That is the pinnacle of art. We should let them be. Let them do their thing.
It's going to be really hard to have limitless 3-year-old creativity in a world full of disciplined people. Let's come back to that. See you next time.
Have a good day.
Bye, Terry.